read one more bit, and then you can be thinking of what you're going to say, because I'm going to have to sit down and have a drink of water after that, and you're going to have to do something. هقرا كمان حتة وبعدين بقى ايه انتوا بقى شوفوا عايزين تعملوا ايه بعد كده. Okay, so this is a section that is purely about the city. This now is at 3 a.m. on the same day. At 3 a.m. on the same day, بس يعني الحتة اللي قبل اللي هقراها كنت بدأت شوية في تاريخي، يعني علاقتي بالمدينة وأنا عايشة فيها ولا مش عايشة فيها، وإني عايشة ما بين لندن والقاهرة 25 سنة. So, Cairo, London, London, Cairo. And Cairo was being constantly downgraded, which is the reason why the book was not written for 20 years. And Cairo was being constantly downgraded. Despite the new luxury, multi-purpose blocks, the marble shopping malls, the $15 million apartments, the city was disintegrating, part through neglect and part, we felt, on purpose. Streets were dug up and left unpaved, sidewalks vanished. Prime and historic locations, like the site of the burned-down Opera House just off Ahdaf, became car parks. Streetlights dimmed, nothing was maintained or mended. Old houses were torn down and monstrous towers built in their place. Public transport became a joke, and in a noose around the city, they built luxury gated communities on virtually stolen land, adorned them with water-guzzling golf courses, and called them European countryside and Beverly Hills. And through it all, I loved her and loved her more. Millions of us did. We'd wake up one morning and find a just-finished underpass dug up again, more marble and ceramics brought in to line its walls. We would check out which MPs had traded in marble and ceramics. They were the same MPs who would send truckloads of balkagis with marble and ceramic shards to crack open our heads in the streets of the revolution. Traffic signals were burned out and bent, and we would wake up another morning to find the city had sprouted plastic palm trees festooned with winking red and green light bulbs. They had really scored there, not only made money, but made Cairo into a cloud. We apologized to her, amongst ourselves and in our hearts. We told her we loved her anyway, told her we're staying. I felt a rush of love every time I passed the strange creamy house with the rotting turrets, which they hadn't yet pulled down, the great Art Deco cinemas, flea-ridden and on their knees, but still there. The day the Cairo Tower lost its discreet white uplighting and was caught in a net of flashing colored dots, I cried. They dammed sections of the Nile to create new waterfront residences. The ministers of housing responsible are now being tried, and land was sold from under residents' feet to foreign investors. Cement was poured into every public construction project, including disastrous restorations of 1,000-year-old mosques. The cement factories ran on subsidized fuel and made a profit margin of 65%. In Mu'attam, the sewage from a new wealthy development on the top of the hill eroded the rock on which Dawlat, the old poor district below, was precariously perched, and sent it crashing down the jagged hillside. The residents are now camped in protest in front of Espiro, their wretchedness displayed for all to see. 250,000 children lived on the streets, and some people set up shelters for them, and some made films about them, and some stole their kidneys and corneas. Police officers ran protection in drug rackets. People regularly fell out of windows during questioning or had heart attacks in police custody. There was a video of a woman hanging upside down and begging, There were protests, marches, demonstrations every day. There were flash screenings of torture videos. The top judges of the country stood for 2 hours in silence in the street outside the judges' club with their sashes and ribbons and medals on their chests. We knew then that judgment would surely come. Degraded and bruised and robbed and exploited and mocked and slapped about my city. I was ashamed of myself for not saving her. Every one of us was. All I could do was look and listen and stay and march and insist that I loved her. And she acted like she didn't care. She unraveled with bravado every thread of that once tightly ordered pattern breaking loose. Blue and green and red and black and every shade and texture, all sprung away from the tapestry, in disarray, tangled, knotted, vivid, sizzling, present. The city stayed awake longer, put more people on the streets. It threw up new haphazard districts, and when the government would not supply them with water or electricity, people stole them from the lanes. It opened special restaurants and started special services to cater for the new Gulf tourists, including agencies for seasonal marriages to young, pretty, impoverished Egyptian women. Small art galleries opened and tiny performance spaces. New bands formed across the musical spectrum. Mosques and cultural centres clutched at the derelict spaces under flyovers. Green spaces vanished, but every night the bridges would be crammed with Cairenes taking the air. We suffered a massive shortage of affordable housing, but every night you'd see a bride starring in her wedding procession in the streets. Unemployment ran at 20%, and every night there was singing and drumming from the cheap, bright, noisy little pleasure boats crisscrossing the river. Trees that were not cut down refused to die. They got dustier. Some of their branches grew bare, but grew. We looked out anxiously for the giant baobab in Sheikh Marsafi Street in Zamalek, for the Indian figs on the Garden City Corniche, for what my kids called the Jurassic Park trees by the zoo. If they cut a tree down, it grew shoots. If they hammered an iron fence into its roots, the tree would lean into the iron, lean on it. If a building crowded the side of a tree, the tree grew its other side bigger, lopsided. I knew trees that couldn't manage leaves anymore, but put all they had into a once-a-year burst of pink flowers. And once I saw a tree that seemed looked after, that had just been washed. It couldn't stop dancing. I loved her. I would wake up in my London bed convinced that as my front door opened onto Wimbledon, my garden door opened onto Zamalek. Until one day, when I was neither in Cairo nor London, but in Jaipur, the Shabab of Egypt decided they would no longer allow their lives to be stolen. And in every district in the country, they got up and walked into the hearts of their cities. They chanted, "We're your sons and daughters too. What we're doing is for you." And we came down from our houses and walked with them. They marched for bread and they marched for freedom, for social justice and for human dignity. We followed them and we marveled at them and we stood shoulder to shoulder with them, and every so often, more often than they wanted for sure, we would grab one of them and hug them and shake their hand and thank them. Yes, we would thank them for lifting the burden of failure from our backs, for ridding our hearts of their load of sorrow, for stepping forward and sweeping away the question that tormented each one of us. What manner of homeland, what manner of future am I leaving my children? What have we allowed to happen to our country, to our world? We are taking care of it, they said. Just stay with us. Parents, friends, draw close to us. And we did. Well, that could never have been a thing without a revolution.